everyone, I'm Essence Turner and I am here with the one and only Colin Tipping, Mr. Radical Forgiveness himself. And today we're just going to chat a little bit about the history and evolution of radical forgiveness. And I started working with Colin and Joanne in 2015. I volunteered with them on a few events. I was going through the Radical Forgiveness coaching certification program, and I assisted them that whole summer, and at the end of the year Colin asked me to be a part of the Radical Forgiveness team, and it's been a wonderful journey working with them. And as I've been working with my clients and teaching classes, they always want to know, where did this idea of radical forgiveness come from? How did he get started with it? And I just thought it would be wonderful to have an interview and ask Colin himself.
All right.
So first, Colin, I want to ask you, what was life like before radical forgiveness? What was your career or profession?
Nothing like what I'm doing now, that's for sure. I emigrated to America in 1984, and that's when things completely changed. My life changed completely at that point. So I know you're interested also in what came even before that. So in England I was basically a teacher. My degree is in education. I was in the art and design area, teaching high school, and then I got invited to actually go to the university and teach teachers how to do what I do. So I was 10 years at that university doing that work, but I was always being pulled to America, always being pulled for some reason or another. And one of my colleagues, in fact, did come to America, and he set up his own school of design and woodworking. And so he asked me to come here and teach with him. So that's how I got to America in 1984. Of course, prior to that, I'd been married twice, and so teaching was, I was in the Air Force for 4 years in the early days, from age 19 to 23. Bought myself out of that. You talk about square peg in a round hole. I mean, me in the military, can you see it?
I can't imagine it.
Man, I mean, I'll tell you. Got out of that, and by that time I got 2 children, one on the way. And let's see, and then that's when I went to college and became a teacher and so on. So that's really very short story about my life before I emigrated.
Okay.
But once I did emigrate, as I say, 1984, I was coming to work with my friend to write the standard book of woodworking, European woodworking. And that's what we were going to do, okay, because I'm a writer, right? I'm good at writing. Nothing to do with spirituality before in that life, before, I didn't get to do anything spiritual until I was in my 50s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, that's not quite true, professionally anyway, until I was in my 50s. But when I did come to America, came to Atlanta, and at that time there was a lot of spiritual work going on. Atlanta was pretty hot in spirituality, and there was some expos going on at that time, and I thought, wow, this is kind of exciting stuff. I'd never equated this with religion because in England I never went to church. If I ever did go to church, it was for weddings and funerals, and I nearly always came out feeling angry. So religion was not part of my upbringing at all. Okay, England's not a very religious country anyway, but we never thought about anything religious. But when I got to America, as I say, there was a lot of things going on, and some friends of mine asked me to go to Unity Church. And I said, well, I don't do church. And they said, well, just come Wednesday evening. Carol O'Connell's associate minister. She's really good at something different. I think you'll find it different. So I did go and found it, wow, this is something quite different. And I had been searching while I was in England. I was sort of searching for something spiritual, but I didn't know what.
Okay.
I read some spiritual books like Alan Watts, people like that, but I was still in that kind of vague, oh dear, what's this all about? What's life all about? I just come out of a divorce and I don't know what's going on. I mean, I was totally unconscious, basically. But when I went to Unity Church, I found something that I could attach to, which was a metaphysical approach to life, a different way of thinking. And so that was the beginning of my spiritual education, really.
Okay.
And followed that, and another teacher called Arnold Patent. Not many people have heard of him, but he was a great influence on my life. And somebody lent me a tape of his, and this was the only thing I can describe as an epiphany, as far as radical forgiveness is concerned. I was playing this tape while I was ironing a shirt. I mean, I had no idea who this guy was. But I was to learn later that one of the things he did at his seminars, he would give a talk, and then he would put 2 microphones either side of the room, and you could come to the microphone and ask a question. Well, somebody had asked a question about forgiveness, and I don't know what it was. But I heard Arnold reply to him, and it hit me like a Mack truck. He said, listen, there's no, forgiveness is not letting bygones be bygones. Forgiveness is recognizing that nothing wrong ever happened.
Wow.
Oh my God, I mean, it just hit me right here. I didn't know what it meant. It sounded ridiculous to me. What do you mean nothing wrong happened? But somehow it really resonated as the truth. So I followed him around for quite a bit, doing his seminars and workshops, listening to his tapes. So he was very influential. And I did my first I guess it was a radical forgiveness workshop, even though I wouldn't have named it at that time. In 80, let's see, 84, 85, probably 87.
So you went from watching Arnold, listening to his tapes, to then just deciding to have your own workshop. How did that come about?
Well, it's quite funny really. I was dating a girl who was a psychotherapist, right? Mm-hmm. I hadn't met Joanne at this point, obviously. And she was doing one of these, she had a table at one of the expos, the spiritual expos, so I'm looking at her stuff and I said, well, what can I do then? She said, well, you can have a corner. Oh, thanks very much. So I created a flyer, forgiveness, blah, 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 blah. And I put it out there, and somebody came along and looked at it, they kind of looked at it. You ought to do the Course in Miracles. I said, what's that? He said, don't you know? No, I said, no, never heard of it. Well, he said, there's a lady just round the corner, she's got a booth, she does Course in Miracles. Go around and ask her. Okay? So I go around there with my little flyer and I said, I hear you do a course called A Course in Miracles. And so she smiled, obviously. She said, yes. Why do you want to know? I said, well, I don't know, is it a 3-week course or what is it? I mean, tell me what. She said, show me your flyer. Because I said, I'm doing this thing on forgiveness. Maybe if I did A Course in Miracles, your Course in Miracles, I'd do a better job. So she looked at my flyer. And she said, you don't need the Course in Miracles, you've already got it.
Wow.
In fact, I'm coming to your workshop.
Wow.
So that's how it all happened. And looking back, Essence, in all humility, I believe that I was downloaded, that radical forgiveness was downloaded into me.
Okay.
Because I wasn't a spiritual person in any way. The only thing that I had that was useful was that I had a skill to write. And so I created a worksheet, and you know that we use worksheets a lot for this radical forgiveness stuff. I created a worksheet and thought that one day I'll write a book on how to do the worksheet. Okay. Well, at that time we were struggling as far as money was concerned. I couldn't make a decent living, and I met Joanne, and we both, was struggling, and so there was always the thought in my mind, when I've got enough time and enough money, I'll write the book. Well, I never did have enough time and money, so it never got written. until 15 years later.
Wow.
Yeah, 15 years. But looking back, I realize now that Spirit knew that the book, if I'd written it when I first thought about it, it wouldn't have gone anywhere. Because no one was into forgiveness at that point. They weren't doing interpersonal work. They were talking about parking spaces and, you know, creating your own reality and all that stuff that they were talking about then. It wouldn't have gone anywhere. So, Spirit was not going to let me make money because it knew that if I made money, I would not do this work.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to languish for 15 years, virtually penniless, bankrupt once. We just had enough money doing breathwork sessions in Atlanta just to put bread on the table. Until one day, I went to a conference in Hilton Head. And this conference was all about alternative medicine, that kind of stuff. And by that time, we'd started doing cancer retreats because we'd recognized that there was a link between people who get cancer and the inability for them to forgive. So it was a very strong correlation, scientifically proven to be so. So I thought, I better go to this conference and see what I can learn. So I went there, and there was one day when I didn't want to go to the keynote speaker, so I went to one of the side speakers, and it turned out to be Caroline Myth.
Mm.
She wasn't famous, and nobody knew Caroline at that point. She was just, you know, on the fringes at that point. But I listened to her, and I thought, oh shit, she's going to write that damn book that I've been promising myself that I would write. So I came home and I said to Joanne, I'm giving up this real estate business, throwing my pager away because there was no phones then, and I'm going to write that book. And she said, I've been waiting 3 years for you to say that.
Oh.
The very next day, she gets a contract from a builder to draw all his houses in perspective and put nice you know, foliage and everything around. That contract kept us alive for a year, enabling us to, me, to write the book, and she was paying the mortgage. So that's how it all started. And from every step of the way, it's been very clear to me now, especially looking back, that Spirit has been in control of this, made sure that everything worked out right. Because there were many steps along the way where it could have been disastrous. The book could have gone out, and there's a big story about that. But I'm sure, looking back, that Spirit said, no, this book has got to get out. And it's been like that since I wrote it. So that's the story of how it got written. I hope that wasn't too long.
No, I want to go back to the worksheet. Did it look like it does now? Like, I think there's 20 boxes, let's say. Did it start off that way, or have you added to it over the years?
I've added to it over the years, but it hasn't changed that much. It's still the basic idea of going through the 5 stages.
Okay.
And I'll address those if you want me to. But no, not really. It's become a little more complicated because as I wrote more books, I added more things in it that people could work with. So there's more questions that people can ask themselves that will, you know, help them to get in touch with their inner world.
Yes.
Yeah.
So with the book, you started off wanting to write a book about how to do the worksheet, but it ended up being so much more. Would you say that was downloaded to you as well as you were sitting down to write about how to do the worksheet?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I started out by thinking, I've got to get everybody's book around me and make sure I don't miss anything, you know, quote this person and quote that person. I had about 10 books all around me, around my computer. I was so overwhelmed, I thought, this is no good. I'm just going to write whatever comes. Threw away all the books, started writing. Took me 3 months to write the book.
Wow.
3 months.
Wow.
And what did I know beforehand? Not much.
Mm.
What I'd learned from Arnold, and I did look at the Course in Miracles. I didn't really study it because it was too much for me. I just couldn't get that language. But I got the main gist of what they say in Course in Miracles, which is basically forgiveness. Nothing else but forgiveness. So there is a strong link between the two. But radical forgiveness has some differences, but there is a link. Other than that, I don't read other people's books on purpose, really, because then I'd start thinking, well, I should get that in there, or I should get that in there. I've written, I don't know, was it 10 books so far? But that's the main one. The radical forgiveness is the one that started it all, and it's gone all around the world.
Wow. It's really inspiring that you went from just listening to his audio tapes and books and his workshops, and then you saying, what am I going to teach? And then actually going out there and doing it. You know, so many of us healers and teachers, we ruminate and we do sit with everybody's book, and we never really take action a lot of times. And so it's really inspiring to hear what you created.
Yeah, it was like a compulsion. I had to do it.
Okay.
Obviously, I had a teaching background, so teaching wasn't a problem for me.
Okay.
I knew how to run groups, but I didn't know how to run spiritual groups in which there was a lot of emotional process work going on. But I got into it real quick. Because, as you know, I believe that with radical forgiveness you have to go through a period where you allow yourself to feel the feelings that you had in the first place that made you feel resentful. If you don't feel those feelings and you just pass over them, what we do, a spiritual bypass is what we call that, then you're not going to get in touch with the what has caused that, because there's always something else. There is a line in the Course in Miracles which I do quote often, and that is, we're never upset for the reason we think. We're never upset for the reason we think. There's always something underneath it.
It's beautiful.
And it's nearly always to do with some pain that we're carrying that we've suppressed, pushed out of our awareness, and we think that what's going on right now is all there is, but no. It's usually something about your parents, or somebody that's done something to you, or even past lives, although I don't emphasize past lives too much. So it's a process of discovery, really, with radical forgiveness. What's really going on?
Yes.
What's underneath that? And it doesn't take much to find out, really. It's pretty obvious. The only time it's not obvious when it's you. Trying to do stuff on yourself is much more difficult.
That's so true.
Because when I listen to your story or someone else's story, I'm listening for these clues that tells me that there's something else other than just that you being upset with your man or whatever.
Right.
That, okay, so I'm listening for little clues that indicates that it might be a father issue or something like that. And that's what remains to be forgiven. And once you forgive your father, then your drama with your man goes away, because there's no need for it any longer.
Yes.
Okay, it's really quite simple.
Yeah, that's definitely been my experience.
Yeah.
So you had a teaching background, but groups and process, and that was all new to you. How did you rope Joanne into all of this? What was she up to before you guys started your retreats and things?
Yeah.
How did that get started with you two working together?
Well, when we first met, she usually tells the story, but I'll tell it real quick. We were at a dinner party with a group of people who had gotten together to create breathwork sessions and little seminars at an apartment. And so we were having dinner. I was there with another gal holding hands. She wasn't my date, but she was my good friend, but Joanne thought she was my date. But anyway, she was sitting there, Joanne was sitting there, and she had just done a whole year's worth of study of Course in Miracles.
Okay.
I had just done that first workshop I was telling you about. So of course the conversation very quickly got to forgiveness. And so we started talking and talking and talking and talking. And that was the beginning of our relationship. It was quite clear that we had our belief system was very much in common. And then as we got to know each other more, life goals were the same.
Okay.
And also that we would both like to work as a team. So she and I have worked together very much as a team all the way through.
That's beautiful.
All the way through. And so she is not a front of the room person, teaching a large group, but she holds space for people. And people know that, and they get it. That without her in the room, it's not the same.
Yeah.
Right?
I can agree.
You know that because you've experienced her. So that was good, really, because I don't give up the front of the room easily.
I know you don't.
I mean, I know where I'm going and I want to go, and I don't want interruptions. Okay, so. But she's there in a support role and holding space for everybody, and people will go up and ask her questions and so on. So it was really a team, and we've travelled the world together. It's not like me just going off with my little suitcase. We've travelled the world together, and it's been very much a team.
That's awesome. I love that. I love to hear that story. I like what you said about your life goals were the same and it being a team effort. I think that's really important.
Yeah. It would have been hard, I think, for her to have a different spiritual point of view than I had. Mm-hmm. I don't think we would have married had that not been in alignment. It just wouldn't have clicked for us, either one of us, because our belief systems were pretty strongly integrated by the time we had met. Okay. Yeah. I mean, some people manage it. I'm not saying it can't be managed, but for me and her, it was important, you know.
So, radical forgiveness has really evolved over the years from a worksheet to a book, and now it's like it's a philosophy that I live by. Like, I take radical living really seriously. Can you speak to that evolution from it being a worksheet to it now being like a life view?
Yeah. It's really, well, first of all, it came out in my mind as a healing modality. It was for healing people. Okay. Emotional and spiritual healing, not physical, although of course we know that with the mind-body-spirit continuum, it's all the same, right? But nevertheless, our focus was on emotional and spiritual healing. And that's how we approached the cancer workshops. We weren't about trying to get rid of the cancer. No, it was about healing your life, and maybe the cancer will go away as a result of that. But that was not our focus. So it certainly began as a healing modality. And then as it evolved, through doing the workshops, it became a philosophy. Okay. Right, yeah. It became a philosophy. A way of seeing life, a way of seeing the world, completely different worldview from what we normally think of as reality, that there was this other reality that was spirit-based, that we live in at the same time as we live on this one. It's not that we go anywhere and just do it on Sundays. It's all, simultaneously. And then out of the philosophy became a practical way of living, and you mentioned it just now. We call it radical living. In other words, it's applying the principles of radical forgiveness, the tools of radical forgiveness, to your everyday life. Yes. Because if you don't have a simple method of being, living a spiritual life, it isn't going to work. I'm not the kind of person who will sit down and meditate for 20 minutes every day, eat, particular foods. It's just not me. I wanted something that was just practical, that everyday life, that you can, just stay aware. It's just a matter of awareness, really, and if you can use meditation to generate that awareness, all good power. So you apply it under any circumstances that you find yourself in, even the most difficult, and that's where it gets challenging, of course, when something bad really happens. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, what do you mean it's perfect? Right. So you have to give yourself some time to process the pain of that and the discomfort of that and the fact that you are feeling angry, you're feeling upset because you're a human being. That's the human aspect of it. But then you shift gradually into this, there's a reason why everything happens, and maybe this is something I created for my learning. Yeah. Okay, so you apply it to every aspect of your life, and you do it in a boom, boom, boom way. I have 4 steps to get you there. Look what I created, number 1. Number 2, I notice my judgments and my feelings, but I love myself anyway. And then number 3 is I'm willing to see the perfection in this situation, through clenched teeth, normally you say that. And then the last one, I choose peace. You just say that to yourself over and over in your mind, and that does get you to a place of peace, which is really all we're looking for. Yes. The only things that really matter is peace, love, and whatever, right? Yes. So So those are the 4 steps, and then the last evolution, which has only really just come about in the last few years, is how we get radical forgiveness to raise the consciousness of everybody worldwide, and that's really our vision for the future. Yeah, that's it. That's where we're going, and we've teamed up with some people who we'll be talking about shortly. But it's a whole new way of operating from the business point of view to get it out there in the wide world. We've got people placed in all sorts of different countries like Peru, Germany, Canada. Where else? Russia, Ukraine, all sorts of places where people are already anchoring radical forgiveness. We're going to work with them to spread it out so that everybody starts to get it, everybody starts to get the philosophy, everybody starts to get how to do it on a practical everyday basis.
And so you would say that's the vision.
That's the vision.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any last words, anything you'd want to share, want us to know before we wrap for today?
Well, the only thing I can say really is that, like you've heard me before say, I don't believe it. I don't really believe the philosophy of radical forgiveness. I don't expect anybody to believe in it because it's hard to really anchor it in there, to make it part of your consciousness. But what I can say with a lot of certitude is that when you apply it to your life, it works.
Yes.
And that's all I care about. If it works, keep doing it. If it doesn't, forget it. It doesn't matter if you want to go into the intellectual whys and wherefores of it, you'll probably get buried. Mm-hmm. So it's better just say, well, don't really understand it, but let me try it. Let me do one of these worksheets. Oh my God, this made a difference. And that's all that matters. So it's easy, it's simple, anybody can do it, and you don't have to have, weeks of therapy to make a difference. Once you do these worksheets, energy works in a way to shift whatever is going on in your beingness, and it happens virtually automatically. That's it.
It sure does. Thank you so much for this beautiful work that you have created and brought into this world. We all love you and thank you so much.
Well, thank you for doing this.
My pleasure.
Thank you.